What's up? So, one of the challenges that I personally have faced when it comes to living a surrendered life is setting aside the approval and the applause of other people to follow what God is telling me to do, as well as setting aside my fears, my anxieties, setting aside my worries, setting aside my concerns, setting aside my plans when it comes to surrendering to God. That has been a major challenge for me. I now refer to myself as a recovering control freak because I don't want to be a control freak anymore. I've learned that ultimately we don't have control. And so that being said, it has been a challenge for me because for a chunk of my life, I have been a control freak, but I have also been a people pleaser. I have been really, really praying to God and asking God to help me with this. And He just continues to pour out His love to me in the way of, reminding me like, hey, if you're going to walk this path, it's going to take that. It's going to take you setting aside your plans for yourself, your plans for the outcome of certain situations in your life. And it really rang true when I lost my job. When I lost my job out of the blue and I got fired for something that was out of my control. That was really God showing me like, one, you don't have control, but two, trust me that if I'm leading you in a certain direction, I got you. The greatest tip that I can provide to you when it comes to living a surrendered life is really just trusting God. And so yesterday in church, actually, my pastor mentioned, he was like, it's not intellect, it's faith, it's belief, it's trust, it's hope, it's confidence. And he was saying, like, when it comes to this journey, like, it's not intellect. Like, you won't be able to pinpoint and calculate. You just have to trust that you can trust God. You have to trust that God is in control. You have to trust that His wisdom is infinite and we can't even fathom it. And so when it comes to living the surrendered life, you won't be able to calculate and pinpoint every single thing that's going to happen. Some of this stuff will be in the moment. Some of the stuff will be daily. Some of the stuff will be, God will give you a promise of an outcome. He won't tell you about the process. You just have to trust Him that if He gave me an outcome, I have to trust Him with the process, and I have to surrender to the process. If we want to obtain the promises of God, we have to also surrender and submit to the process associated with the promise. Sometimes that process can be very, very grimy and dirty. Sometimes that process can look like impossibility from whichever angle you look at it. In order for you to experience the God of miracles, you have to give Him a chance to be that, right? So the only way that a miracle can be performed is when an impossible situation is presented to us. God promised Abraham that he would have a son, and yet he and Sarah were super old. God made a promise to Joshua that the walls of Jericho would fall down, and yet He gave him a simple instruction of marching around the walls of Jericho. Well, if I'm marching around the walls of Jericho and blowing a trumpet, how are the walls going to fall? That's impossible, right? But in all of that, God had already set a miracle in motion. He simply asked a willing vessel to surrender to His will. Surrender to the process so that you can get the outcome. Surrender to the process so that you can obtain the promise that I have for you. We don't always see it that way, though. While we're in the process and things get hard and things look hard and things look impossible, we tend to speak death. We tend to say, well, never mind, I'm going to go the other way, right? But the Lord is saying, just surrender. By you surrendering to the process, I am building something. I am working something out. You're going to trust me even more on the other side of this. But first, you have to surrender. First, you have to submit to my will, my way, my timing, my outline, my process, my sequence of events. You have to surrender. You have to submit to that. Never mind your plan. Never mind your will. Never mind your way. Can you surrender to God's, even when it doesn't make sense? Even when it's hard. Jesus got to a point where He said, Lord, is there any other way? Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. He was so surrendered and so submitted to the will of God that He was willing to set aside His own feelings, His own plans, etc. And also, living surrendered, sometimes you will have to surrender the old to embrace the new. Surrendering to his way of doing things, abandoning the old ways of doing things, and submitted to the renewed process. Living surrendered is a progressive work. Living surrendered doesn't mean that you're going to see the full picture. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to see the full picture. But when you decide to live surrendered, you have to know that it is a progressive thing. It is a daily journey. It is something that you have to do one step at a time.